Thank you to all the super sponsors for supporting these videos, including new super sponsor QB. Visit David X Newton on Patreon to join the ASCII Brigade. OpenTTD is never short of opinions about your transport empire. In previous videos I've talked about your company rating, both in the game and how it's scored at the end, the reliability rating of your vehicles, which isn't really a rating, and the numbers that govern how town authorities rate you. Another kind of rating comes from your stations. Clicking the ratings button on the station window will open a list of all the cargo types that are given to this station by towns and industries, an estimate of how many units of them arrive at this station per month, and a percentage indicating how good the service is for each of them. I've never been particularly good at getting high ratings here, seeing them mostly hover somewhere in the 60s or 70s for most cargoes. So let's talk about yet another kind of rating that I haven't looked at in depth before. The code that defines stations and their data structures is in the station base header file. Among really quite a lot of data, each station keeps track of an array of goods entry objects, with one for each of the 64 cargo slots that are available in the game. These goods entries have properties that keep track of things like the actual items of cargo that are waiting at this station, the time since the cargo type was last attempted to be picked up and the vehicle that was responsible, and the value that we're interested in, the rating for that cargo type. Like many values in OpenTTD, this is translated to a percentage between 0 and 100 for display to the player, but it's really an 8-bit integer that goes from 0 to 255. Just to make things slightly more complicated, the value you see in the game usually isn't really the true station rating. Behind the scenes, the code regularly totals some points up to work out an actual value that the cargo service is rated at. But what's stored in the station data, and the value that you see in the game, is a value that's set to move towards this true rating value by a maximum of 2 points up or down every 5 seconds. This smooths out any bumps that might be caused by a temporary jump or drop in rating, and spreads out the effect of large changes. To try to keep things manageable, I'm going to call the actual calculated rating the target rating, and the slowly moving rating we normally see in the game as the current rating. As usual, I've tampered with my copy of the game a bit to display the internal values more obviously, and throughout this video I'll mostly be showing and talking about the target rating. In this station window, the target rating is the value TGT, and the current rating that you would normally see is the value marked now. You'll notice the necessity for smoothing immediately because the target rating can fluctuate wildly, and we'll find out why that is as we dive into how that target is calculated. We find the start of the process in stationcommand.cpp in onTickStation, which is called by the game every time it updates its state, that is, about every 30 milliseconds. Stations operate on two schedules. There's a function that gets run for every game tick called stationHandleSmallTick, and one that runs every 250 ticks called stationHandleBigTick. However, the small ticks don't really count for anything until we reach a sort of medium tick. All that stationHandleSmallTick does is increment a counter, somewhat misleadingly called delete CTR, until it reaches the threshold of station rating ticks and calls the update station rating function. Station rating ticks is a constant set at 185, so in real time the gap between rating updates is almost exactly 5 seconds. Each time update station rating is called, it will first go through some housekeeping, starting off confidently with something that does nothing to the station rating. It will increment the station's overall time since the last load and unload up to a maximum of 255. These values are used to decide whether a station is active or not when calculating the company performance score or how much they've annoyed the local authority. With that out the way, the code looks at each type of cargo available in the game and prepares to calculate this station's rating for each of them. For each goods entry that has a rating, that is, at some point a vehicle capable of carrying this type of cargo has arrived and dropped off or picked up at this station, it will increment the time since pickup, then start a variable called rating at 0 and go through a set of checks that can add or subtract from this number to arrive at the target rating. So here's how it does it in 4 easy steps and 2 very difficult ones. We'll start off with one that's a bit of a pain. Our first stop is the goods entry's last speed value. This value gets updated whenever a vehicle arrives at a station and loads a cargo of this type. You'd be forgiven for thinking this would be a fairly straightforward process, but when I was stepping through the code I ran into a bit of a hiccup that I'd glossed over before. In fact, it's more like a hiccup, sneeze, burp and various other bodily expulsions simultaneously. In previous videos this problem wasn't really important and I got around it by saying vague things like speed units when talking about vehicle speeds, but we've got to face it now, and the fact is, all vehicle types count speed in a different way. Once we've taken a breath and we're ready to face that fact, let's step back a bit and look at the definitions for the game's default vehicles, which are stored in the engine's header file. There's one table that we've seen before in the breakdowns video called ORIG Engine Info, which has information about all the vehicle's life cycles and the cargo types they're capable of carrying. Alongside it, there are 4 more tables called ORIG Rail, Road, Ship or Aircraft Vehicle Info, which store more data about each engine's properties and capabilities, along with things that are unique to the vehicle type, like whether an aircraft is a jet, propeller plane or helicopter, or which rail type a train can be built on. Max speed is among the data in these tables, and we can understand how it's expressed for each vehicle type by comparing the speeds declared here to the speeds reported in the game. Boats are by far the slowest vehicles that it's possible to build. According to the vehicle window, the MPS oil tanker crawls along the water at 24 km per hour, but its max speed value in the code is 48. The in-game maximum speed is halved from the number declared in the code, therefore each kilometre per hour on a boat is worth 2 speed points when setting the last speed value for the station rating. Even with this bonus, the score for boats isn't great. The Bakewell 300 hovercraft is the only default boat in the game that goes at an even slightly respectable speed, with its lightning-fast 112 km per hour, meaning a last speed score of 224. Moving up to slightly less glacial vehicles, the famous Microprose Regal Bus trundles along at a leisurely 56 km per hour, but it has a max speed defined as 112. So you would think that again, each kilometre per hour would be worth 2 speed points. However, the game arbitrarily decides to punish buses and trucks in the code that sets a station's last speed when a vehicle arrives there, dividing the value by 2 if it was of type VEH road. So these two adjustments cancel each other out, and the result is that a road vehicle will contribute a last speed score equal to its displayed maximum speed in kilometres per hour. Trains refreshingly go at speeds in-game identical to those declared in the table. The openers, the Kirby Pole Tank, Cheney Jubilee and Ginzu A4, all have max speed values that match their speed in the game, and there are no adjustments made to the score on arrival at a station when the last speed is set. So a train will give a last speed score equal to its maximum speed in kilometres per hour, up to the last speed variable's upper limit of 255. Finally, aircraft have the most involved process of all vehicle types here. The 3 internationally recognised standard plane speeds of 475, 952 and 2329 km per hour are expressed as the relatively tiny values 37, 74 and 181 in the code. However, the code that reads the table for planes does something that no other vehicle table does. Every maximum speed value declared in the table is multiplied by 128 and then divided by 10 before it's actually stored in the game's memory. Therefore, these values become the much more respectable 473, 947 and 2316. It doesn't stop there though, because there's bad news as well. Similar to road vehicles, when an aircraft arrives at a station and a cargo entry's last speed is set, the plane's speed value is put through a formula called getSpeedOld units. This does the exact reverse of the formula that boosted the maximum speed value upwards when the table was read. It will multiply the plane's declared maximum speed by 10 and then divide it by 128. Because of integer rounding, this leaves the possible last speed scores at 36, 73 and 180, each of which is 1 less than the corresponding max speed declared in the code, giving aircraft the worst return on kilometres per hour of all vehicles. Of course, aircraft don't actually move at their declared speed anyway, but we've already said enough about their somewhat on-again off-again relationship with the laws of physics. As for why all this is done this way, I'm really not sure, but even the maddest looking code decisions usually have some reasoning behind them. I had to guess that it might have stemmed from an efficiency by Chris Sawyer in 1994, keeping all the vehicle speeds expressible in a single byte by making sure all the values were under 256, then multiplying them up depending on the type. However, the entries for monorail and maglev trains break through the 1 byte limit of 255 quite severely, so that obviously isn't the full answer. Anyway, Back at the short line of code I started explaining 8 paragraphs ago, the update station rating function will get the speed score of the most recent vehicle to load this cargo type, which will be double the apparent speed for a boat, the same as the displayed speed for trains and road vehicles, and about 7.7% of the speed for a plane. It will then subtract 85, and if there are any points left over, it will generously award you 1/4 of them as your score for vehicle speed. So that is step 1 of 6. But now let's talk about a couple of easy ones. The code now moves on to looking at the time since the last pickup of this cargo was made. Like I said 3 weeks ago, the value for the time since pickup is incremented every time the update station rating function is called, so we're counting in terms of cycles of about 5 seconds. As long as the time between cargo pickups is less than 145 seconds, you'll get a bonus to the station rating score, starting at 25 points and then increasing through a few bands, with the best score being reserved for stations serviced every 15 seconds or better. This might sound like an absurd demand, but it doesn't mean a separate vehicle has to arrive at the station every 15 seconds. As long as there is a vehicle waiting at the station and it has the capacity to pick up more of this cargo, the time since pickup counter will continuously be reset to 0, so it's to your benefit to have a vehicle loading at a station at all times with as little gap between them as possible. Having multiple smaller trains transporting cargo is much better for your station rating than one massive one that arrives less often. There is also one special condition here. If the most recently visited vehicle was a boat, the measured waiting time is divided by 4 to account for their slowness. So oil rigs and other stations served by boats can have up to a minute between visits and still get the full 130 point bonus. The third step for calculating the station rating is very simple: minus 90 rating points. There's nothing you can do about this, it's completely hard-coded, and it can even push your rating so far into the negatives if you've only been sending one knackered bus up and down your line and amassed fewer than 90 points so far. To attempt to earn some of that back, we now have to look at the station's cargo, and here we have to stop again for a moment. Because OpenTTD doesn't do something easy like look at the amount of cargo waiting at this station, there's a very involved process behind crediting cargo in the game back to this station, which I'll do as much as humanly possible to explain now. First, let's talk about how the game keeps track of cargo. In stations and on vehicles, cargo is shown to the player as just a type and a number. However, underneath they're organised into groups called packets. One packet is a group of cargo that was picked up from one origin location at one time. When a Microprose Regal bus wheezes and puffs its way into a stop with more than its meagre maximum capacity of 31 passengers, then it will load exactly one packet of passengers of size 31. But if it picks up passengers from 2 separate stations without unloading, or makes multiple different visits to the same station and picks up more passengers, the bus will really contain multiple packets of passengers. Each of these is marked with the size of the packet's origin point, and the amount of time the packet has been in transit. You can see a part of the packet details if you open up the cargo for a train that picks up from more than one station. You'll see that some carriages credit their cargo's origin as different places. However, this still isn't the full picture. This window only shows the origin point for the cargo packet that happens to come first on that vehicle. So if there's a mix of packets from Station A and Station B, only one of those origins will be shown. However, we don't really need to dive too deeply into the subtleties of cargo packets and how they're split up and combined during a journey for now. All you need to know here is that cargo knows which station it came from. Right then, the part of the cargo rating derived from the amount of cargo present is based on a value in the station's goods entry called max waiting cargo, which actually gets updated after the station rating has been finalised during an update station rating cycle. The first time a station's rating for this cargo is updated, this value will just be 0. But at the end of each rating cycle, max waiting cargo will be set to what the game calls the waiting average. This is the amount of this cargo actually available at the station, divided by the number of destinations for this cargo plus 1. If you're playing without the cargo dist feature that maps cargo to specific destinations, then your number of destinations will always be 1 because cargo is not tagged as having any particular destination. Therefore, your max cargo waiting value will be half of the amount of this cargo waiting at the station. However, with cargo dist turned on, cargo will have a set of points it wants to travel through, which you can see by clicking the plus sign in the station details window. The more immediate next destinations in this list, referred to here as their via entries, the more forgiving your weighting average will be, so you don't get hugely penalised at very large stations with lots of routes for one cargo if one of those routes is a bit slow. In this example, the airport has more than 1,000 passengers waiting, but they're going to 4 different destinations, so the max waiting cargo value for passengers is just over 1,000 divided by 5, working out to just over 200. Once it's worked out, the max waiting cargo value is saved to the data in the goods entry, and the next time the update station rating function runs, it will score the station against this value. So, can we talk about how the max cargo weighting value is scored now? Not even slightly, because wait until you hear this, other stations can also manipulate a station's max cargo weighting value. Let's consider a case where we're busing passengers out to a picnic in the middle of nowhere at a station that doesn't actually accept passengers, then just dumping them there and zooming off. The passengers will accumulate at the drop-off station, and as no vehicles are arriving to pick them up, the rating for this cargo type at the station is pretty dismal, sitting at 40 points. Having a low rating for cargo at a station increases the random chance that the station is going to lose cargo on this cycle. I'll go over the exact conditions in another video, but at some point passengers are going to give up and walk, or turn into skeletons and crumple to dust while waiting for your bus, or whatever you want to imagine. When a station decides it needs to lose some cargo, it will call the truncate cargo function. This looks across all the packets of that cargo type that are waiting at the station, and will try to distribute the subtraction evenly across them. While it's doing that, it will take note of all these packet source stations and total up the amount of cargo that originally came from those stations. Then it will look at the origin station's max cargo weighting value, and if it can, it will increase it to match the amount of the origin station's cargo that's now waiting at this station. So if our mystery tour pickup point has only a few passengers waiting, it might get a very low max weighting cargo score on its own, but in between its update station rating cycles, the picnic black hole station gets a turn. If it loses passengers, which is determined by random chance at low ratings, then it's going to run truncate cargo and look around for someone to blame. In this case, the pickup point is the only station that's given the picnic station cargo, so the pickup point receives 412 points of maximum weighting cargo, the same as the number of passengers now waiting at the receiving station. The picnic spot station sets its own max weighting cargo to 0 for this cycle. The next time update station rating runs on the pickup point, it will use this much higher value to calculate the points for its cargo rating, before correcting itself back down to what the pickup point calculated for itself this round. Therefore, its target rating instantly drops. After playing this section of the video back to myself, I've realised that I sometimes referred to the critical variable as max cargo weighting, and sometimes as max weighting cargo. This is because I am going mad. But there's one more thing to say, as if your head isn't hurting enough by now. If a station needs to lose cargo, and it produces that type of cargo itself, like any pickup point from an industry or most normal bus stops which both accept and produce passengers, then the station will include itself in the list of origin stations to blame. This means that even if a station doesn't act as a stopping point for any other stations, when it's crowded enough to start losing cargo, it will boost its own max weighting cargo value up to the amount of cargo still waiting, no matter how many destinations it has. Therefore, we could be scoring against 2 different things for the waiting cargo part of the rating. If you're running an efficient service and cargo isn't decaying, the score will be half of the amount of cargo waiting at the station, or less than that if you have more than one destination. But if you let cargo pile up, either at the point of origin or at any station where you're dropping cargo off to be picked up for another leg of the journey, then there is a random chance the score will be bumped up to the amount of cargo originating from this station at whatever station on the map has the most cargo that originated at this station. Having suffered through all that, the calculation of the cargo score is thankfully very simple, again having different scores depending on which band the max weighting cargo number falls into. There's no bonus if the max weighting cargo amount is more than 1500, but beneath that the bonus rises sharply to 55, and then 90 if you score under 1000. So it isn't uncommon to make up for the 90-point penalty in the previous step immediately. The lower bands have much less dramatic changes, ending with a maximum possible bonus of 130 for keeping your max weighting cargo value under 100. So with all that said, you generally want to stay under 200 units of a single cargo type weighting. You will doubtless be as relieved as I am to know that the last couple of checks are more straightforward again, and the fifth check is for a feature that I overlooked for a very long time. In the local authority window for a town, among the options for advertising, funding and passing brown paper bags full of money under the table, you can have the town build a statue of you in honour of your company. I had thought this sounded like an overly self-important thing to do, but it does make a difference. If the town a station belongs to has a statue of the company owner, then 26 points will be added to the station rating here. That's over 10% of the maximum possible rating points, so it can really give a boost if you have the money and you're looking for things to improve. Lastly, we go back to looking at the most recent vehicle to pick up our cargo at this station and examine its age. If it's under 3 years, you get 10 rating points, under 2 years gives you 20, and under a year gives you 33 points. However, the age is calculated as the difference between the current year and the year the vehicle was built, instead of looking at the actual age of the vehicle in days. This means in this calculation, the age rolls over on December the 31st whether you bought the vehicle in January or Christmas. Therefore, vehicles bought at the beginning of the year will give you a bigger boost for longer. We now at long last have the station's target rating for this cargo. Up to 42 points for the maximum speed of a pickup capable vehicle, up to 130 for constant pickups, minus 90 points, plus another possible 130 for keeping waiting cargo reasonably low, 26 for a statue, and 33 for recently bought vehicles. This gives a potential range of -90 to 271, which is then clamped to 0 to 255 to fit into a single byte value. The actual current rating displayed in the game will now move by up to 2 points towards this value if it isn't there already, and the whole algorithm starts all over again when update station rating is called on the station again 5 seconds later. At this point, I anticipated explaining a set of strategies to consistently maximise your target cargo ratings, but the fact is the mathematics are not on our side here. First, as the highest possible score is 271 and you need to reach 255, to achieve the maximum rating you can only afford to lose 16 points across all of these checks. Second, it's very difficult to lose just 16 points across all of these checks, largely due to the time since last pickup category, which will knock a colossal 35 points off your rating if a vehicle hasn't been seen at the station within the last 15 seconds. So getting the maximum score on that check is mandatory, and so is building a statue in the station's town to get the 26 point bonus. That leaves us only able to afford to lose points in the vehicle speed category, and either but not both of age and cargo weighting. Assuming we have a maximum score for speed, a second tier result for cargo weighting will lose us 10 points, giving us 261, and a vehicle 1 to 2 years old will lose 13 points for 258. So depending on whether we got both or either of those full bonuses, we can now afford to lose very few points in the speed category. A perfect score in all other categories comes to a total of 229, and we need at least 26 points out of the possible 42 for vehicle speed to reach 255. With either shortfall, it gets even more difficult. If we have too much cargo weighting, we need to make up a further 10 points to account for its penalty, and in the worst case we need 39 points with a tiny 3-point margin of error in the honestly pretty likely condition that we lost the maximum score for vehicle age. You might recall from several pages ago that this is the code that works out the final rating score for vehicle speed. We take the max speed score of the most recent vehicle to try to pick up a cargo type, minus 85, then bit shift 2 places to the right if there's anything left over, which is the same as dividing by 4. If we reverse this, take our required values, then multiply them by 4 and add 85, we can see our vehicle needs to give us 189, 229 or 241 speed units, or whatever they're called, to achieve that score. Road vehicles and planes cannot do this because of the penalties that are applied to their speed for this calculation. Road vehicles get points equivalent to the speed values you see in the game, and the fastest one available falls very short at 127 km/h, and even the supersonic planes don't quite make it with their score working out to 180. If we've got both the full age and cargo weighting bonuses, then a single boat can come to our rescue. The Bakewell 300 hovercraft becomes available after 1967 and achieves a score of 224. However, if we've lost either of the top tier bonuses, it falls short as well. This leaves trains as the last things to look at, and you may distantly recall that they also get speed points equivalent to their speeds in kilometers per hour. There are 3 standard railway trains that can qualify depending on how many points we need to make up. These are the 264 km per hour Asia Star, the 240 km per hour TIM, and the 200 km per hour SH125, which arrived between 1977 and 1992. But after that, all monorail and maglev trains are fast enough to make up the points, with the slowest being the X2001 in 1998, which comes in at 304 km per hour. So if you want to keep the absolute best station rating possible, exclusively send these fast trains to pick up cargo, make sure one of them's always loading, make sure waiting cargo stays low both at the station and at temporary holding points coming off it, build a statue in the station's associated town, and replace all your trains every 2 years on January the 1st. Now you might say these demands seem unreasonable, and frankly you'd be absolutely correct. You can boost your cargo ratings temporarily though through the options in the Town Authority window that I mentioned before. Unlike all the factors that Update Station Rating goes through, these work directly on your current ratings and will make an immediate change to them. The target ratings calculated by Update Station Rating will remain unaffected, and the current ratings will gradually decay back towards it after the boost. All of these work by searching outwards from the town centre and boosting all the current cargo ratings of stations within a radius. They measure by Manhattan distance, meaning one step of the search is a move along either the X or Y axis. A tile diagonal to another is 2 moves away. The small advertising campaign will boost your stations within 10 tiles of the town centre 64 points, which is 25% of the maximum rating. The medium campaign gives nearly double that boost, giving an extra 112 points to your stations within 15 tiles, and if you have it enabled, buying exclusive transport rights in the town will give a 130 point boost within 17 tiles in addition to that advantage. At the top end of the market, the large campaign will give a massive 160 point boost to all your stations within 20 tiles. This is 63 percentage points and can cover all sorts of shortcomings if you have the money to keep it up, which in OpenTTD you generally do. However, even though the radius is generous, these boosts won't affect stations at industries that are far away from the town even though they're technically associated with it. So our poorly rated fish market on the coast will need some manual work to get it into shape instead. Your current rating can also be knocked down until it eventually builds back up to the target rating if a vehicle crashes. All the varieties of this penalty are pretty harsh. If the victim is a road vehicle, then any station within 22 tiles of the crash will immediately lose 160 rating points. If it's a train, the radius is increased to 30 tiles. If there's a bright side here, despite trains generally being destroyed by crashing into each other, a 2-train crash will only cause 160 rating points to be lost, and they aren't counted twice for 320. Nevertheless, a 160 point rating loss is very significant. It will take 80 cycles of Update Station Rating for the current rating to build back up to the target rating again, which takes just over half a game year. Fortunately, you might be able to recover some of the affected stations near town centres with advertising campaigns. Aircraft have the biggest penalty of all. In the event of a crash, which as we've covered before is 34,155 times more likely than it is in real life, not only will you get the 30 tile radius 160 point penalty, the airport whose runway was dented will have all its current cargo ratings set to 1 and will also lose all its cargo. This includes cargo that isn't even handled by your air routes, so if you have air crashes enabled, attaching an airport to a very productive industrial station comes with a risk of eliminating your entire stock. The other way to lose your entire rating is with the town bribe action in the local authority window. Allegedly, this has a 1 in 14 chance of failing, but the real failure rate seems to be always as long as you really need it. When you get the red window saying your bribery has been discovered, all stations that are associated with the town with an unlimited radius will have all their current cargo ratings dropped to 0, and you're blocked from using any other actions here for 6 months, so you can't even reverse it. And when I say all cargo ratings for plane crashes and failed bribes, I really do mean all, including for cargo types that don't even exist at the station. To account for that, Update Station Rating will quietly add 1 point per cycle to every cargo type that isn't actually visible, until it gets back up to the initial cargo rating of 175. And that, finally, is everything that can affect your station rating in the game, apart from if you're using mods of course, which are all free to do what they like with it on top of these rules. If you don't feel like bothering with all this, you can also turn on the sandbox mode option, Fix Station Ratings at 100%, which will make Update Station Ratings skip many of the rating checks and just call your rating 255. Strangely, the checks for vehicle age and the statue still run after the rating is set this way, and can technically bring your total rating during the calculation up to 314 points, but this makes no difference as the target rating is always capped at 255 anyway. As for what station rating actually does, this is already the longest OpenTTD video I've ever done, and there's a lot more to explain about how the rating affects the cargo that comes into your stations. So use this information how you will to keep your station ratings high, and we'll be talking about why next time. Thank you to everyone listed here for supporting the creation of these videos. Please visit David X Newton on Patreon to join the community, see videos earlier, and get some bonus content.